Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. As always, we are coming to you with our morning wrap, which, of course, highlights some things that you may have come across or not come across whilst you were catching up on some sleep. And obviously, yesterday was Super Sunday. There was a big India Pakistan match that was taking place, which, of course, India ended up winning convincingly. But a lot of the talk after the match came about from the lack of a handshake that was offered by, of course, India's skipper Surya Kumar Yadav. And whilst obviously Sakai was praised massively by a lot of people, including us on our platform, for actually not doing that, it turns out that, as expected, the Pakistan team, the Pakistan Cricket Board, have decided to kick up a bit of a storm when it comes to this lack of a handshake. And obviously, this is something that, whilst expected, it is going to obviously add a lot more spice, a lot more drama going into that. So let's get straight into the news. It is worth noting that the PCB put out a statement saying that they had registered a formal complaint against the match referee Andy Pycroft. The reason for them registering that formal complaint was because they said that Pycroft instructed the players not to shake hands before the match and that they felt this violated, let's say, the sportsman spirit and ensured that there was no sportsmanship in this particular match. And in fact, the reason and Salman Ali Agha skipped the post-match ceremony. Normally, the captains will always go and speak to the broadcasters after the match. And you remember that we speculated yesterday about what exactly was the reason that Salman Ali Agha chose not to actually show up for the post-match presentation, whether it was some form of protest, whether he, let's say, was instructed not to, whether the broadcasters weren't interested. Well, it turns out that Salman Ali Agha actually skipped the post-match ceremony in protest due to the complaint that they had launched against the Indian team for not quite showing up to the to not showing their sportsman-like thing by shaking hands. And this is, of course, an escalation of what happened yesterday, which is truth be told along somewhat expected lines. What's also along expected lines is that the chorus of voices coming out from Pakistan has really accentuated this and tried to make it a much bigger deal than it is. For instance, Mohsin Naqvi, who it is worth noting, chairman of the ACC, chairman of the PCB, also a minister in the current Pakistani government, has said that it was disappointing to see this lack of sportsmanship from the Indian team. Lack of sportsmanship, that's a bit much when you're trying to actually play the line of, okay, let's not mix sport and politics. But I think at this point, then, it is impossible to see both of them as being separate entities when it comes to India Pakistan games. Yes, you can say don't play them, but again, one of the reasons that you're choosing to play them is because you've gotten governmental clearance from the central government. So I think what the Indian team were trying to do, obviously, was to ensure that they play the game, do the professional thing, and then don't add to the noise. Unfortunately, they've added to a lot of noise that is coming from our neighbors across the border because Shoaib Akhtar, someone who's never been afraid to give his opinions on anything, also came out and said that, boss, this is sports. Let's not try and make it too political. And again, as I said, if you're trying to not avoid or if you're trying to avoid politics when it comes to an India Pakistan game, it is a little bit tough because, again, it is impossible to look at any matches or any games that take place between India Pakistan without looking at the political side of things. So Shoaib Akhtar saying that it seems a bit rich, but again, very consistent with the kind of messaging that has been coming out from across the border in recent times and that you'd expect would be coming out because they feel snubbed that the Indian team didn't shake their hands. How dare the Indian team do that is the kind of message that is coming out from them. Moving on to more sporting, side of things, because again, I think a lot of us would be a little tired of looking at it from the political angle. Ravichandran Ashwin, the former India all-rounder, said that looking, India-Pakistan is no longer even a contest. And again, that echoes a statement that a lot of us have been saying. India versus Pakistan games was obviously hype because there's an ancient traditional rivalry there, and at times you've had a few thrilling games. I think more often than not in recent times, to Ashwin's point, you've had a lot of games that whilst have also been close, but there have been just as many that have been one-sided, particularly in the ODI format. Yes, T20Is you do tend to sometimes get a thrilling game here or there, but in the T20 format, you've had a few thrillers, but again, the gulf in class between both sides so much that you tend to agree with what Ashwin said when he says that this is hardly a competition. Moving our focus now from the world of cricket and focusing on a couple of football related news. Barcelona fans, you can rejoice because you beat Valencia 6-0 in the La Liga game. Obviously, there was some expectancy that Barca may struggle a little bit due to the lack of availability for Lamine Yamal, but no Lamine Yamal, no problem for Barcelona. Two goals each for Fermin Lopez, Robert Lewandowski, and Rafinha got the job done for the Blaugrana against Valencia. Good result all around. Also, speaking of Barcelona, someone who used to torment them a little bit in the past, Luka Modric, who was, of course, now left Real Madrid, joined AC Milan, ended up making a little bit of Serie A history when he scored just days after his 40th birthday to give them a 1-0 win over Bologna. Now, why this is historic is because Modric is now one of six players to have actually scored a goal after his 40th birthday in Serie A. And it's a pretty interesting list because it includes the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Fabio Quagliarella. So that's obviously, pretty elite company for someone like Modric to be in. And the fact that he's still going strong at the age of 40, this tells you everything you need to know about the man. Also, you remember that yesterday there was a Manchester derby that Manchester United soundly lost. They lost 3-0 to Manchester City. And Manchester United's coach Ruben Amorim has come out and said that, listen, I am suffering more than the Manchester United supporters right now. And he's promised to give everything to turn the club's fortunes around. Now, obviously, it can be a little tough being in Ruben Amorim's shoes because let's face it, turning Manchester United around at this point feels akin to trying to turn around a sinking Titanic. You can see it go down, you're trying your best, but at this point, it just seems like a little bit of a lost cause. Sorry, Harshit, if you're watching, but truth is true. And at this point in time, the Manchester Derby, very interesting that you actually had a Manchester Derby and an India Pakistan match in 2 days. Because if you ask me, both of those matches are pretty one sided rivalries that people tend to remember more for the historic reasons than they do for sporting current reasons. Neither of them are great as far as the rivalry side of things on the field is concerned. Yes, off the field, obviously United fans want to beat City and vice versa. Off the field, though, I mean, it just isn't really much of a competition. We're talking the team that actually finished third last year versus the team that finished 15th. Exactly. Also, another bit of interesting news that came out of yesterday's Premier League fixtures. Liverpool took on Burnley and they ended up winning 1-0. But probably one of the most talked about things was the fact that Alexander Isak could seal the club record move on deadline day, didn't even feature in the squad for Liverpool. However, Arne Slot, the Liverpool manager, has revealed that the former Newcastle United striker is kind of being saved for their, Champions League game that is going to be coming up against Atletico Madrid. Obviously, you have to remember that Isak hasn't really been training much through the summer. He went on strike pretty much to, force his move through to Liverpool. And once that worked out, he's obviously, lacking a bit of match fitness. So I did kind of expect that he'd maybe at best make only a bench appearance. But obviously, Slot saying that they're trying to save him for the Atletico match makes a ton of sense. Ending it with a bit of news from the world of athletics, and this is an interesting one. Tanzania's Alphonso Felix Simbu actually ended up winning the marathon gold of the World Athletics Championship by a very, very small margin just on Monday. He ended up beating Emanuel Petros of Germany in a very dramatic race to the line. Obviously, a historic moment for Simbu. Congratulations to him and congratulations to the people of Tanzania. But I'm afraid that's it from this edition of the morning wrap from us. Thank you guys very much for joining us, as all you always tend to do, whether it be day, night, or anything in between on Sports Fair. Grateful to have your company. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap that bell icon, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget to download the Sports Tech app. Stay tuned to Sports Day. We're going to be bringing a lot more coverage, a lot more reactions from everything, not just India, Pakistan, but the world of sport. For now, from my side, though, peace. Goodbye.